Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. First tonight, the state of Mississippi is staring at a serious budget deficit following the COVID-19 outbreak. What action can we expect from lawmakers, and how will the legislature work with the governor going forward? I spoke with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann earlier this week to discuss these topics, but I started by asking him to share his thoughts on the death of George Floyd and the subsequent protest.
Horrific to watch that occur on TV, where we had another human being held down by a police officer and basically suffocated. I don't know anybody that wasn't totally repulsed by that, including me. We should never have that in our country anywhere. People should be having very robust discussion about this and the relationship between us and our law enforcement officials, 99% of which work really hard, have dangerous jobs, take the highway patroller out on the street at night, and they don't know who all's out there, and all kinds of issues they have. But that doesn't mean that we're perfect, and it doesn't mean that we ought not have a discussion like this. But I'm pleased that Mississippians are voicing their opinion. They have a right to do that, and we need to continue a legal discourse where we're talking to each other about things that need to be better in Mississippi and better in the country.
There is a lot of anger out there, and there's also a lot of fear. Do you believe when this is all said and done that there'll be some serious discussion and possibly some change about how we deal with policing, particularly when it comes to minority communities?
I'm hopeful. We have taken these steps in our country in the last 50 years. It seems like we take one step, two steps forward, and then a step back, and we continue to progress. But I expect this will entail a further discussion. Chief Davis from here and others, how they relate to our local policemen relate to the community, getting out of their cars, that kind of thing, which they started a few years ago and kind of gotten away from, and having community involvement where people talk to and respect their community officers. I've ridden with Jackson Police Department at night before I was hired to do this job. And, some of the things they see and do are pretty dangerous, very dangerous. And so you can understand how they sometimes be reluctant to do some of the things that they have to do. I think that discourse will be positive. I think every time you see a horrific event, like we've witnessed on TV virtually every hour or every day, I think that will end up bringing us together on steps forward. We still have work to do. It's obvious to me. We've come a long way in the last 50 years, and we still have work to do.
What do you say to Mississippians who are really concerned about how race relations are right now, but want to be united? What do you say to them?
I think you have to look at the fact that we live and work together. I mean, you look around here, the mayor of Jackson, a third of my Senate are African Americans. You look at people in leadership positions that are mayors and city councilmen and boards of supervisors all over Mississippi. We live and work together here every day. Our people do. And that is something I think that gives us a franchise for discussion. That gives us the ability to have discussions. I can walk out this back door here and meet a number of African American senators. We'll be discussing these kinds of things today and tomorrow. But we live and work together, and we go to school together, and we're not so spread out. I mean, when you look at Chicago, the South Side never goes to the North Side, the North Side never goes to the South Side. They are geographically dispersed and don't speak with each other. Here, we live together and we work together. And I think that's an answer for us progressing together.
A lot going on here in 2020, and we're still dealing with the coronavirus, and it really is impacting the state and the state's economy and the budget. You're dealing with a budget deficit of projecting $1.2 billion. If you're not getting any help from the federal government, what will you have to do?
Well, the first bills that the Senate passed this last Friday showed a 6.5% decrease, except for education, which was less, decrease in funding for all the state agencies pretty much across the board. That creates probably about a $250 to $300 million. We're very hopeful that the projections are wrong for next year and we can do better. and obviously we may have to use some of our rainy day fund. It is a rainy day, and I can't imagine one other than Katrina when it's been raining more than it has now. So we're really we're going to have to cobble together ways in which to artfully reduce expenses where we can, and state agencies are going to have to be more efficient. They're going to have to tighten their belt. We don't print money here, so we'll have to make some very difficult decisions. Most of our members of the legislature have been used to appropriating more money every year for so many things, from education to everything you need, healthcare, safety, all the others. This year, we're not going to be in a position to do that. So we have some very difficult decisions to make. And I know we're all focused on that, and we don't want to cut anybody's budget. We want people in Mississippi to get the same services they always have. But there's some things we'll have to postpone. There's some things we'll have to cut back on, and that's just facts of the matter. I think we're prepared to do that.
When you talk about tightening budgets, are you talking about possibly eliminating some positions and jobs?
That's up to the individual agencies. We appropriate the dollars from here, and I've been on the other side of that when I was Secretary of State. But we had about 100 people that worked there, and so we may not have rehired a position, left it open. For example, there's a 5 or 10% turnover in every organization, so you may not have rehired somebody and have people double up, that kind of thing. I think you'll see. I would prefer for each of the agencies to make the steps necessary that they think, and we have X amount of dollars to give them, and they'll be authorized that amount of money, and they'll do the best job as possible. We want to keep everybody employed. I think that's very important, to have everybody that's got a job that hadn't moved on or retired. Those positions will open, but everybody that has a job, we need to keep them working. First, we need to have the state run well, and then second of all, we need the economics. One of my kids, on these Zoom calls, and this is too long for your broadcast, but I'll tell you anyway, I'm on these Zoom calls with children and students all over Mississippi, probably 50 different classes I've been in, from government to Spanish classes. And so one of them, I ask them always, what do you think? Do you have any questions? One of them asked me, where did all the money go? Where did all the money go? And I thought that was so interesting to me. And I tried to explain to them that we only make money when it's transferred through the economy. Every time there's a transaction, someone makes money, the state collects taxes. Those are what's going on. When you have this recall like we have right now, when people aren't spending money, aren't going to restaurants, aren't buying goods and services necessarily they would have in the past, when that occurs, then the economics of the state are suffer, as well as the economics of their parents. So it's the turnover in the economy that's so critical, and we have to get people back to where they're comfortable with their jobs. That's why I'm telling you, we need to keep the jobs of our state employees comfortable with their jobs, comfortable buy a new washing machine, buy a new car, do the things that they do, go out to dinner, take the children out, those kinds of things that have the economy circulate through and give us the revenue we need to continue to prosper.
Last month, the Senate and the House then came back early to work on the CARES money. There was some disagreement with the governor's office. You came together, but is there any lasting disagreement or feelings between you all and the governor?
Not with me. I guess I'm old enough now that, you have one disagreement. That doesn't mean it's a lifetime disagreement. That means you disagreed on one thing. So, I reached out to the governor today on some other things. And so I just don't work that way. I'm sure there'll be other things we disagree on, other things we'll agree on. And I think that's why we got 3 branches of government. So he's in the executive branch and we're in the legislative branch. I think it'll prove it. That working together will prove healthy, I think, for Mississippians. And I don't look over my shoulder much. So we'll keep going forward.
Much more with the Lieutenant Governor when we come back. What are the other issues that you guys are going to be facing in the legislature as you kind of work on 2020?
Well, we have a number of things that are problematic. Corrections is not functioning. And so we've got a new corrections commissioner. We have to make decisions on where we're going with the corrections. People take too long to get their driver's license. That has to be redone. We just got a new commissioner for that. And we have to have it where people can get their driver's license without standing in line 4 or 5 hours. That's crazy. You'll see us addressing issues like that. Our health care, spending the money that we've got here on health care and on coronavirus funds, you'll see some of that. You'll see us looking hard at workforce development. There are many different ways to do this, but we have 186,000 individuals who have lost their jobs in Mississippi or applied for workers' comp. As many as 40,000 of those may not go back to their same job. So they have to be retrained to do another job, hopefully one that's better paying. And so how are we going to do that? How are we going to go about the long-term educating of individuals as the needs of businesses change? How can we have a competent workforce?
There's been a lot of talk with this the pandemic that we could get a second wave come the fall. With us opening up, are you at all concerned that we'll see something spike this summer or before the fall?
I am very concerned about that. I mean, we can hardly sleep worrying about what happens if it comes back. The probabilities are that it will. And we're going to have to deal with it. And we could not face another 3 months closed. In fact, I don't know that we're out of this one yet. I think the governor is taking gradual steps to allow people to start to congregate again and businesses to open up again. But I anticipate that's probably going to cause a spike again from where we are. So we are going to be challenged again. We prepare for that challenge and pray it doesn't happen. But I can tell you, we're going through all kinds of planning for, like, what happens if we have an election with a pandemic? How do you work that?
What is your position on the debate on the whole mail-in balance issue, since you were once running the elections in the state?
Well, the biggest problem always, and I worked on this for 12 years. When I first came, I think there were like, out of 82 counties, I think like 24 or 26 of them had more people registered to vote than were alive in them. They had more people registered to vote than were over 18 and breathing. And so we started a process for cleaning up the voter rolls. Those are done locally, not by the Secretary of State, or they'd have been cleaned up by today, I can tell you that. And every one of those clerks has to come back and clean up those voter rolls, and it's a continuing process. I don't know that the voter rolls are yet right. They're much improved from when I started, but I know the current Secretary of State is working on that with circuit clerks as they turn over as well, to make sure that we have the voter rolls right. That is a precursor to me to sending out any ballots anywhere.
Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's good to see y'all. Have a great day.
Thank you. And we'll be right back. Now, the death of George Floyd, the black man who died during an arrest by Minneapolis police. His death sparked more than a week of protest. We talked with a number of state leaders, including Congressman Benny Thompson and Michael Guest.
I think you see a combination of frustration on the part of a lot of people. You see a lot of people who saw someone killed before their very eyes by someone who was sworn to uphold the law. And I think that has had a tremendous impact. The young man called for his mother while he was losing his life, has had a tremendous impact on females in this country. So I think the fact that it played out live has had a galvanizing impact all over the country, in this country, to come forward. The poverty that continues to exist in this country, the discrimination that continues to exist, the fact that the top 1% in this country continues to thrive, while many of the people who go to work every day continue to struggle. And so you now have the convergence of that dichotomy happening and in real time. And what you see is so reminiscent of many of the demonstrations in the 60s and early 70s about people wanting to make a difference. The unfortunate thing is there are still some bad actors here, but for the most part, the majority of the people who you see all over this country are wanting to make this country a better place.
We talked with Republican Congressman Michael Guest about the president's reaction to the unrest and his thoughts on the Floyd case as a former prosecutor.
I think that people are very concerned with what happened in Minnesota, and I think that they are exercising their First Amendment rights. And so I stand with the protesters that do so in a peaceful fashion. But we continue to condemn anyone who would use those protests as a reason to cause chaos and destruction. And so it does seem to be that there is a de-escalation intentions across the United States, and this will allow us to be able to have a dialogue back and forth and to address the issues at hand. The number one thing that the president has tried to do is to restore law and order across our United States. We've seen that the day following those addresses that we saw that the protests again throughout our country remain mainly peaceful. There were very few incidents of unrest. And so I think that we are working toward restoring that order. And again, that would then allow us to focus on some of the underlying issues and allow us as a nation to begin healing and to begin getting back to business as usual in some sense.
When you see that video, what's your reaction?
I think that's the right action on behalf of the prosecutors in this case. This was an investigation, and I think that was what the American people were being told, that, look, we want to make sure that we have a chance to review all the evidence, talk to all the witnesses, and make the right decision. I believe it was the right decision very early on to charge murder for the officer who was most involved in the death of George Floyd. And now, at the conclusion of that investigation, the officials there in Minnesota feel it's appropriate to charge the other officers. And so I think that this was something that ultimately officers just wanted to, our law enforcement wanted to make sure that they had conducted a proper investigation. That's now been done. And I hope that also will help serve to ease some of the tensions that we're seeing across our nation.
When we come back, what Mississippi's political season will look like without one of its biggest events. This year, Mississippi's giant house party is off. The annual Neshoba County Fair is canceled this year because of COVID-19. The board of directors say that the decision to cancel was made with a tremendous amount of thought, discussion, and consideration. And after consulting with the State Department of Health, we talked with Mississippi Today's Bobby Harrison about how this will impact the political season.
Big race that would have been watched this year in the Neshoba County Fair most likely would have been the U.S. Senate race between Cindy Hyde-Smith and Mike Espy. It would have been a rematch of the 2018 special election where Cindy Hyde-Smith won that. I think she had about 53% of the vote against Espy, and Espy's running again this year. And I think he would have been looking to the Neshoba County Fair to kind of break out and make a name. His campaign has been limited during the pandemic, so that may be a little setback for him, but it will all miss the political speakings. While that's the big race, we would have heard from the governor, from the lieutenant governor, from all the state elected officials. So it'll be the first time, I think, since World War II that we won't have in the Neshoba County Fair. I'm still optimistic that things will get better, and maybe around August or September we can start getting out and seeing the candidates, and the candidates can start seeing us. But it won't be like the fair where you could actually sit on the porch of one of those cabins and drink tea with the the governor or lieutenant governor. That's just such a unique aspect of the fair that we don't get in other aspects of politics in Mississippi. Well, this is going to be a big election. The presidential years, that's when the most Mississippians got to vote. But this has become such a Republican stronghold that, Espy is hoping to turn that around in the Senate race. Whether Joe Biden can challenge Donald Trump in Mississippi, that's yet to be seen. Maybe this, COVID-19 and all this stuff going on around it, and the stuff around the police circumstances in Minneapolis might bring people to the polls that don't normally go to the polls. So maybe there'll be some different results in Mississippi. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to watch.
Thanks to Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, Congressman Benny Thompson, and Michael Guest, and Mississippi Today's Bobby Harrison for joining us. I'm Byron Brown. We'll see you next Saturday night for another edition of Mississippi Insight. Until then, make it a good night.